Since it's been a while, and this is my first time speaking to this group, I'd like to get get a level of people's experience, their knowledge, where they're at with these teachings, so that I know that my talk makes sense to everybody. So I have a few questions to ask. Is that okay? Just to trying to get up. Yeah, okay. I promise it won't take too long. So, first question: how many religious scientists can you fit into a car? An infinite number, as long as they're all in one accord. Okay, well, okay. Second question. We didn't do so well on that one, Joe. But okay, we'll go to the next one. Hopefully, we'll find this base level. So how many practitioners does it take to change a light bulb? Practitioners don't change anything. They just know the truth. Okay. What a relief, Joe. I think we're all at the same level, right? Yes? Yes? Yeah. I think Craig's looking at me like, don't quit your day job, Daniel. So. Someone asked me if I was concerned about what other people might think about my talk, and I replied, I said that if they thought that they had no idea what I talked about, but they had a good time and they thought I was funny and they enjoyed themselves, I said, I'm okay with that. So we're lowering the bar here for me. So here we go. So last Sunday, Reverend Jill did a great job speaking to the mind-body connection. And the science of mind symbol shows that the mind plants the seed, and that the seed turns into the soil. Let me rephrase that. The mind plants the seed, thought, into the soil, which is law, and arrives in body, which is form, which we know is our experience. So this comes out as our experience. How we live and explore each day is running with this idea that the mind is working with us, right? Okay. So the next one is going to be the founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, says, body is always an effect, never a cause. We would never say that consciousness is in the body, but rather that body is in the consciousness. Neurological science has identified that we're operating at about a 10 to 15% consciousness level. Sometimes I would be happy at 10 or 15%. That means that most members of the human species are operating on a subconscious platform. So we think of our mind as a supercomputer, that we are just using a small fraction of that. So it's much like a operating system. This unconscious, this subconscious part of our mind is like an operating system that's running in the background all the time. And we're going to come back to that notion, explore that a little bit further, okay? So for example, most of us receive our driver's license at what, age 16 or so? And we have been driving for many years successfully. Some of you more successfully than some of us. When we are going to drive somewhere, when we get in a car, before we even start the car, do we inspect the tires, check the air pressure, clean the windshield, look around for any damage that might be caused? When we get in the car itself, do we think about adjusting the mirrors and the seat height and the steering wheel and everything? No, the first thing you usually do is you fire up the car and you turn on your favorite radio station, right? And then sometimes when we are driving, we get to our destination and we wonder, how the heck did I get here? Have you ever come to a place and go, I have no idea how I got here. I'm glad I'm here, but I have no idea why I'm here or how I got here. And this is the operating system running at a subconscious level. So we've been doing this for so long that we can shut off the conscious part of our mind and just operate on this subconscious, which in some respects is okay. Now let's imagine that we're getting ready to, well, I just went out and bought a new Porsche, right? I didn't, but let's just say we all went out and bought a new Porsche. And we're getting ready to get in our new car. We're so excited about this. But let's add another layer of interest to this thing. So now we're ready to get in this new Porsche, but we're going to go out on the racetrack. Yeah, sounds more exciting, huh? Not only are we going to go out on the racetrack, we're going to be driving at high speeds. And we're going to be driving with other cars on the racetrack at high speeds. How does that feel right now? So, what do you think our consciousness level is right now? We're getting in the car. I would be willing to bet that everyone that's getting into that car is going around and inspecting everything on that car, the tires, the tire pressure, the brakes, cleaning the windshield. Once we get in the car, we're fully conscious in adjusting the mirrors, getting the seat belt just right, the seat height, everything, getting our helmet on. So even if we're all that's going on, how conscious are we? Are we 100% yet? Not yet, but we will be soon. And I'll tell you why. Because as we get onto the racetrack, guess what happens? We have no room for anything else. So from my experience of being on the racetrack, and I talk about this in the past, not that one, Joe. Come on, that's there we go. Jeez, he's killing me here. I'm a nationally certified high-performance driving instructor for the Porsche Club of America. So I get to drive in really fancy cars, these wonderful, beautiful cars at high speed, and I teach other drivers how to do that safely and quickly. So when we get out onto the racetrack, all we're thinking about, all we have time to think about is the racetrack, where the other cars are, the next corner, when do I brake, when do I shift, things like that. How do I keep this car on the track? How do I maximize the performance of it? So we can make ourselves feeling more conscious. I just lose the. Am I out?
Just keep talking here.
Okay.
Give me that. I'll put in from you.
Okay. Here we go.
You can use that microphone.
Yeah, I will do that. Let me just take this for a second. We can go ahead with this. So I know for certain that we would be using a higher degree of consciousness than the 10 or 15%. And I'm guessing someplace close to 100% at this point, because we have no room for a wandering mind when we're on the racetrack. So what do you think about this? So we are feeling a little fearful, anxious, worry, illness. Is that the body responding to the subconscious program that's running in our background? I invite us to think about that notion that years ago, our subconscious was programmed by our experiences of life. For instance, when Danny, comes home with a bad report card, what happens to him? He gets yelled at, which he equates to not feeling loved. So essentially, what we have learned to do in our lives is to avoid the pain of not being loved from teachers, parents, relatives. And so we want to think about this programming as something that's always going on, and that it was written and implanted a long time ago, before we had the filters of adult, that we could say, they have their own problems. They're not loving me because they don't feel love themselves. They don't have it to give. So Ernest Holmes says that disease is not always due to consciousness thought. What I believe he is saying is that I don't think I'll get up today and have a migraine. I don't think I'll drive like a maniac on the road, like I'm driving on the racetrack, and put myself and others at risk. Of course not. How could someone do that? Thank you. How is that? Is that working now?
Yes.
Good. So I'm going to have a little bit of water. So this programming, this notion of the programming as we know it is always going on. It's always a part of what's going on in the background. And so when we have an illness or something that is affecting us, most likely it's coming from a prior experience. And how we interact with that and how we judge that to be part of our life is part of this programming. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So one of my experiences has been in Tai Chi. And my first introduction to Tai Chi was with a group called Esalen. And that was in the early 70s with a master, Al Hong, and who's been doing workshops there for over 50 years. So he's been around for a long time. He once said to me, Tai Chi is easy once you understand it. I went, okay. And that's kind of like Yogi Berra saying, once you get to the fork in the road, take it. So another fun story is that during one of the breaks from training, we were in a snack area. And of course, there was all this healthy food. This was in the 70s, Esalen, etc. And here's the master, and he's eating out of a bag of Cheetos. And he's eating these Cheetos. And I asked him why he wasn't eating all this healthy food. We got all these choices. And he said to me, he says, anyone can eat healthy food and live a long, happy life. He says, it takes a real master to eat this junk food and live a long, happy life. I thought that made sense. That made a lot of sense. So one of the reasons I love Tai Chi is that on the surface it seems like a dance, with the movement and slow movement and everything. And it is. However, there are many layers to Tai Chi. And the yin-yang symbol, you will notice, is there's a light side. And that's the healing qualities, the relaxing, the meditative part of Tai Chi. And the dark side is the more martial arts side of Tai Chi. And they see how they blend together. And just like life, everything flows like that. And so when I'm doing Tai Chi, or when we do Tai Chi, as we progress to deeper levels, we're able to realize that mind-body connection on a more intentional level. Okay? So we're more conscious of that. And so in doing so, I've been able to lower my heart rate, lower my blood pressure, my respiratory, and just by thinking about it, by becoming more conscious about what's going on inside. Yes, it does take a little practice, but I can teach anyone to do that. Thus, by the simple action of being more conscious, we can affect our body. And in our body is our experience of life. That's what Ernest Holmes says. When we can sort that out a little bit more. So have you ever noticed that when you ask an adolescent why they did something wrong, I don't know, how many people have adolescents in their lives? I don't know. Why they did something wrong, what's their first response? I don't know. And the hell of it is, they don't know. Or they're not aware of why they do what they do. And that really happens to a lot of people. If you think about all the marriages that fail, a high percentage of the people that I come into contact with and talk to said, well, what happened? It just sort of ended. I don't really know. And they may have some specific examples, but it's like not really aware of what's going on. So I liken it to driving. When we're driving, you see a theme here, we're driving, on the bottom half of the gas tank. So if you notice that when you're driving and you're watching that gas gauge and it goes past halfway on its way to empty, how do you feel? Anxious, a little worried? I bet maybe concerned. So how did we get there? Were we conscious during this event? Most likely no. And so that's showing up in our life again, that we have this programming running where we're off doing other things that we're not being present for. So this speaks to the disconnect from spirit that Holmes talks about that may cause us dis-ease. I break it down because it's like we're not going through life with easy, dis-ease. It's not ease. So here's the paradox. We have this operating system that's always running in the background. It was created or influenced by others, usually before we had the filters of adults, as I said. We learned that by pleasing others, teachers, parents, family members, we got rewarded in the form of praise, love, or punished when we didn't do what we were supposed to do by withdrawing that praise, which we interpreted as love. So this operating system is making choices for us that at best shows up in our lives sometimes as we want, but a lot of times as we don't want. They would be different, I know, that the choices that I have made had I made them fully conscious, as opposed to running on this program, the subconscious level, not in touch with it. So another example, when learning how to dance salsa and bachata, this was a few years ago, I had to really focus on the moves and the different routines in order to not look like a doofus. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. After my first dress rehearsal for a showcase event, this was in front of a live audience, it was a tango bachata number, if I remember right. The dance rehearsal went terribly wrong. I did about everything wrong. My shoelaces were came untied during the routine. I forgot where I was at. I forgot the beat. It just was a mess. I did about everything but pee my pants. And that would have been a topper. I'm glad I didn't do that. So I went home. I had, as we would say in the business, a come to earnest talk with myself, which is another way of saying I ignored my self-conscious programming. I engaged my consciousness and told myself that what was going on, this idea that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't entitled to success, that transformed out on the dance floor to something horrible, that wasn't who I was. That wasn't the truth of who I was. And so I engaged my conscious self to take over and used it to save the show. So I guess you're all wondering, well, how did the performance go, Daniel? Well, it went really well. My partner and I, we killed it. We got a standing ovation. Of course, everybody was standing at the time anyway, but anyway, I'll take it as a win, so it's okay. So we're gonna finish up with 4 action points that we can use going forward. The first one is practice. I originally thought 2 weeks, but I made it, why not practice for the whole month of February? So practice driving on the top half of your tank for the month of February. Notice the difference of how you feel. Equate that to topping off your tank of love. So for instance, when you're driving along and you're wandering around and you look down and go, oh my God, I'm at half a tank, check in with yourself. How am I doing with my intentions? Am I present? Am I conscious? How am I feeling today, right this moment? Am I feeling loved? Do I need to connect with someone, make a call, connect with someone and find and get remembered that I am loved by that person? Use your intention cards every day and expand them to include more in your life. So my intention was to be loving and more loved. And a lot of times I move through life a little too quickly. I get impatient. And so one of the new intentions that I have is slowing down. And so now I'm using the cruise control in my car in the city. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I set it to either the speed limit or maybe I cheat a little bit, a couple miles an hour over. Because if you don't, you'll get run over in Phoenix. And in addition to that, the car has all these other nanny assistants on there that if you try to wander in another lane, it shakes the car a little bit. Have you noticed that? And if you put on your blinker and there's a car in the blind spot, or supposedly the blind spot, it will beep. It will beep loudly and say, hey, what are you trying to do? Then also one of the features of cruise control is that it automatically slows you down for the next car. Instead of how I used to do it was, like I'm on the racetrack, come right up behind somebody and then brake at the last second. not a very safe method of driving, and not very loving. I'm sure the person that's watching me come careening up the back end there, they don't like that either. So slow down, take it easy. Develop more intentions. Begin a practice of something that ties you to your consciousness, to your body, such as yoga, tai chi, Pilates, hiking in the desert. And so I hike in the desert quite a bit, and I notice people walking by, and they have the headphones on. You ever seen that? They have the headphones on. They don't even know that you're there. In fact, I was hiking one time in the McDowells, and as I was coming down the trail, there was this nice 6-7 foot rattlesnake, diamondback, stretched across the trail, sunning its belly, really nice. And so I noticed this because ahead, because there's a crowd of people that were on the other side that weren't coming this way. And I looked down, big, huge snake. And so we're standing there waiting for the snake to make its way across. And this woman that had headphones on was coming at a pretty good clip right behind me. I put my hand out to stop her, and she thought I was, I don't know, I'm doing something. And she got really upset. And then I pointed down at the snake, and her eyes got this big. I think she forgave me for doing that. So be more conscious with that. Try to find something that connects the body to the mind to the consciousness to get that mind-body connection going. And then the last one is create an intention of there is so much time and so little to do. And this was done by Milton S. Hershey, who developed, of course, as we know, the famous chocolate company. And he was very busy in the time, and this is back in the 1800s, early 1900s. Not a lot of internet going on back then, not a lot of computers. And so everything had his hands on a lot of pieces of the pie. And so he created this intention that, I got all the time in the world and nothing much to do. And that was from one of the busiest people in the world, on the planet at that point. So it goes back to being able to create this mind-body connection where our consciousness is really driving our experience, what we realize as our experience, our body connection. And then finally with a quote, peace comes from the absence of fear, from a consciousness of trust, from a deep underlying faith in the absolute goodness and mercy, the final integrity of the universe in which we live, and of every cause to which we give our thought, our time, and our attention. By Ernest Holmes. So what we want to do with that quote is realize that we're bringing intention to everything we do. When we focus our consciousness, all things can happen. Okay, please join me in prayer. So as I recognize that the presence of Spirit is here, it's here flowing through each and every one of us, through the people that are hearing this from and the internet, the people here, everyone in the sound of my voice knows and feels that Spirit is here, and I proclaim that that is the truth. That right here, right now, we are fully engaged in our intentions and our purpose in life. That consciousness is bubbling over in each and every one of us. And that we take from this message exactly what we need to be present in life, to be more fully engaged, to feel loved, to be more loving. I know that this is the truth of who we are. And I also affirm that this is flowing through us right now with abundance, with love, with ease, with grace, as we go out into our day, knowing that there is an abundant quality and quantity of love, of happiness, of joy. It's available for each and every one of us here today, right now. I know this to be truth. And I know this is just a small example of what Spirit is. But I proclaim that that's running through this voice, this message right now. And we don't need to do anything with this. This is now imprinted into that subconscious background. So it's now becoming part of our makeup, our mind-body experience. I know this to be true, and I am so grateful to be able to speak this word into the law that always says yes. It says yes to each and every one of us, fully, completely, without any filters. And so as I release this into the law, I know that each and every one of us will go forth today with joy and with happiness. And I proclaim this to be true and affirm it together, and so it is.
So it is.